of the 1st of December. My name is John Barnes. I chair the Audit Committee. On my immediate left is the Monitoring Officer, and on my right, the Chief Finance Officer and Section 151 Officer. I will introduce other people as and when they are required. First of all, the minutes of the last meeting, can I take those as an accurate record? Everybody happy with that? I will sign them then as accurate at the end of the meeting. Secondly, apologies for absence. I think Councillor Chowdhury and Councillor Cooper are not here. And they're not online either, are they? No, they've sent apologies. So they are both absent, which is fine. Additional agenda items, there are none. Disclosure of interests, dispensations, any interests? Nobody? Yes, housing company.
Maybe declare member of Bexhill Town Council, but it's probably not relevant.
I don't think I want everybody declaring parish councils, but I will take Councillor Thomas's declaration as chairman of the housing company. I think that's all. Anybody online? No. Right. In which case we move on to the external auditor's report. Now, have we got the external auditor?
Yes, Addy.
Welcome.
Good evening. Can I check you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, everybody. I will take the report as read and then just focus on the key exec summary, if that's okay with the committee.
That's fine.
Thank you. So Charlotte's covering paper was actually very thorough, and so focusing on the key exec summary on page 13 of your pack. The audit findings report is a very positive report from our end in terms of looking at your arrangements of your value for money arrangements. Members of the committee may recall that our review covers three main areas: financial sustainability, governance, and what we refer to as the 3 E's that covers the economic effectiveness and economy. So if I pick up very quickly on the financial sustainability, happy to report here and elsewhere in the reports, we haven't identified any significant weaknesses in your arrangements. We identified one improvement recommendation within financial sustainability, and that's won't come as a surprise, relates to your replenishing your reserves and implementing a reserve strategy. Again, just to very briefly, whilst you made a surplus in 24-25, there continue to be pressures across a few of your services, including planning, premises costs, and chief executive offices. And then looking ahead into 25-26, already there is a planned drawdown of your reserves, general fund reserves, as part of balancing the budgets. Looking further into the medium term, 26-27 and 27-28, there is also planned use of reserves. However, just to put that in balance, you do have a healthy earmarked reserves of 32 million as at 31st of March 2025. So again, that gives us a degree of comfort around where the council is. But again, we've made that improvement recommendation around that reserves policy. In terms of governance arrangements, again, we didn't identify any key weaknesses, and we made just one improvement recommendation, and that's around improving the transparency in your procurement activities and reporting to members your tender waiver activities. And again, that's generally good practice so that goes across for members to consider on a periodic basis. On the economy effectiveness and arrangements, we found that to be sound and to identify any improvement recommendations. As part of the work, we also reviewed your prior year recommendations, and last year we identified 15 improvement recommendations. Happy to say that all but 5 have been actioned, and 4 of those outstanding were partially actioned, and just 1 remains that's going to be actioned within 25-26. The final area to highlight is on page 18, which refers to the work we undertake on the financial statements. So we received the accounts some 3 weeks after the 30th of June deadline. The work is currently in progress, and we'll be bringing our audit finance report to the audit committee meeting in January of next year. I will pause there, Chair, and take any questions on our value for money reports.
Are there any questions from members or any points you want to follow through? The one I noticed, which I do think we will take forward as a result of tonight, is the Cabinet clearly should look at the risk register at least once a year. So I think we will take tonight's risk register and draw the Cabinet's attention to it with a covering note, presumably from the Chairman of the Audit Committee. So that one will be taken forward. Are there any other questions that people have? Yes, Councillor Thomas.
Chair, just to notice that, first I just want to make a general comment actually, which is that when I look at all the papers coming to audit tonight, I just want to say that my overall feeling, and I don't think I'm the only person to feel this, is there's been a tremendous improvement in this council in recent years. There's a real sense that having good objectives, good processes to reaching them, and worthwhile ways of assessing how things are going and reporting back. So I just want to make a general comment. I feel that there has been a great strengthening of the management of the council in recent years, and the management structure and the quality of the personnel who are carrying these things out. So just a general comment. Just want to draw attention to the tremendous success, really, of the savings. This has been far and away the most successful year, with an aim of 2.57 million and actually achieving 2.15 million. I mean, that's really a very satisfactory percentage, and nothing like that has been achieved for many years. So I think that's really worth noting. And the other thing that I think is of interest is the recommendation that there should be a programme to actually rebuild the reserves. I think it's worth drawing attention to that particular recommendation, so the auditors know that we've noticed that they said that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I wouldn't want to cast aspersions too far back. I do remember when I first joined the council in 2016 that we were still building our reserves year on year, and I think by 2018-19 we actually had 18 million in unassigned usable reserves. I rather agree with you that what happened to the savings programme at the time of COVID and just after it did suggest a loss of grip. And I do agree with you that the more recent appointments, I think, have got a good grip, and that this year's savings programme, for the first time, we're within sight of actually delivering it. Even so, we're not going to deliver all of it. So I think congratulations are in order, but the further back you go, there were some very good officers, I think, before 2020. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. What I would say is what we've got now, thanks to general improvements in IT across all departments is greater visibility. Everyone can see what they're doing. And so I think the intention was always there to run, if you like, a tight ship, but the information wasn't always there. So I think a lot of credit should go to the way we use IT, not just the fact that these things are all possible, but which we haven't gone for the shiny rock syndrome of just because we can do it, we will. We've picked and chosen to cast the spotlight on the things we really need to be looking at. And I think all in all, IT has done a good job providing a baseline against which everyone can see what's going on.
Totally agree with you about the way we've embraced technology. There are problems with that, as we all know, but at the end of the day, it's got to be a very important part of our efforts to get cost effectiveness into this council. So we can certainly note that in the minutes, and I think we will pick up Councillor Thomas's suggestion in the minutes as well. The housing company obviously is going to necessitate some changes, I think, to the final accounts. I think that's one of the things that is holding us up. Beyond that, I think what we need to endorse is the need, now that our usable reserves, the unassigned usable reserves, are down to 2.8 million at best, possibly as low as 2.3. I do think we need to start looking, or asking the executive to start looking at rebuilding, or at least having a strategy for rebuilding that. The new unitary, if it goes ahead, is going to be in deep financial stock at the beginning because of other authorities. I don't think we should be adding to their problems. With those comments, is everybody happy to note and receive the annual report as presented by Grant Thornton? And I think we should thank them for what is a very comprehensive and valuable report. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
You are very welcome to stay, but feel free to go if you want to.
Thank you very much, Jake. Good evening all.
We now move on to the risk management update, which we're going to resolve not merely to note, but we're going to recommend that the Cabinet study this with some care, because it suggests a position which is not entirely comfortable. That's not to do with the way that this council is run, but is to do really with the current context in which local government finds itself. Central government grants have, apart from specific grants, have virtually disappeared, and we're about to get a review of local government finance, which is going to benefit, I think, the north at the expense of the south. Whether we will be hit by that, given that we're a pretty deprived authority ourselves, like many other coastal districts, is we wait with bated breath to see. But it does seem to me that the financial risks that we are speaking are really quite excessive now. So I do think you should look very hard at the early risks, which are the financial ones, and consider whether we've scored those correctly. I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulty with finding my paper. That's fine. Not there at last. Does anybody want to comment on the financial risks? Have we got those correctly stated? Everybody happy with that? Okay.
Just say that the financial risk might have been increased by the budget, because if landlords now have to pay, is it VAT they have to pay on rental income? Is that right? There's increased taxation on rental income, and that's going to put further pressure on landlords who may, and I'm not sort of going into the politics whether it's desirable or undesirable, because no doubt the motive behind the move is a good one. It's to do with kind of fairness and so on. Nevertheless, the effect is likely to be that more landlords will probably leave the rental market and thereby increase homelessness, which could have a serious impact on this and other councils. I think the intention, I think, is good, to try to, to take rental income and tax it in the same way as you would other forms of income. So it was done out of a sense of fairness, but the effect could be to increase the amount of homelessness by decreasing the amount of rental property available. Or possibly, of course, that landlords will pass that increase on in terms of increased rents, causing further financial difficulties for renters. So just to say, I think that particular risk it's already there as red, so it can't be increased, but I think that the reality is that will be something that will impact this council.
Yes, my impression is the disparity between wage levels in this authority and rental was already
massive,
high. The fact the government has added to the problem, I don't think will actually alter the scale of the challenge we face. But we have authorised Joe Powell's department to buy additional properties, and we've been very successful so far in actually minimising the cost of homelessness. It's only about, I think, 9% of our overall budget, whereas it's over 33% of that of Hastings and Eastbourne. And that's the success of the programme that we recommended, which has been taken forward by the Housing Department. Joe, do you want to comment?
Only to agree with Councillor Thomas that is a risk that we are keeping an eye on. There's a range of measures are being brought forward which will tip the balance, as it were, in terms of renters' rights. It will mean that landlords have fewer securities potentially. But it remains a profitable business. I understand that over 90% of landlords report a profit in 23, 24. And I'm not sure that we're overly concerned about the financial position of most landlords. Some will struggle, of course, depending on their levels of debt against the properties that they own. But certainly the majority of landlords are in a secure financial position as we understand it and as the data indicates. But yeah, we're working with landlords, working with tenants to make sure that the properties remain as affordable as they can, but the risk remains, yeah.
Anna, I'm aware I should have asked you to introduce the report, and I do apologise. Would you like to speak now?
I'm sorry, Chair. Could I just come in? I've had my hand up for a while just before we move on. Is that okay?
Very happy. But would you like to wait for Anna first? Anna,
Pardon?
Please wait for Anna, and then because she may say something that's relevant to what you're about to say.
Thank you. I think you're doing a very good job explaining the risks anyway. You'll see from the report that, as you've already mentioned, we have a lot of risks that exceed their risk appetite score. These are the financial ones, but also cyber security and data protection. We've added a new risk for one of those, and we've scored both at 20 to reflect the ever-increasing threats that we have to our systems. You'll notice that the other risk that we've got in here is a bit more of an emerging risk about the strategic asset management programme, and that we have a very tight programme timeline to devolve our assets before LGR, and there's a lot of assets, so it's right to flag up that this is a very large piece of work, and any delay to the devolution progress will mean that we will have gone into LGR. So it won't be up to us what happens to those assets. So I flagged that one up. Also, we've articulated a bit better the risk concerning the Rother Housing Company. It was a new emerging risk last time, and we've scored it and put mitigations and everything in place for that one. But other than that, I do agree with everything that you've said, and Councillor Thomas, about the budget and the housing risks.
Thank you very much. Now, can I bring you in online?
Councillor McGurk, thank
Councillor
you.
McGurk, yes.
Yeah, I was just going back a few minutes there, just noting the anxieties and concerns about potential events in the future, like the funding formula and concerns for landlords. And we don't want to discourage landlords, of course, we need landlords, but Joe just mentioned the Renters' Rights Bill, which, despite having been held up in the Lords for a while, is being enacted. And it's just important to remember that risks, financial risks within the housing market will be hugely mitigated and reduced for renters because of the Renters' Right Act. So obviously the big headline is no fault evictions. We've also got rolling periodic tenancies, more notice and stability when landlords end tenancies, restrictions on rent increases, limits on upfront and advance payments, right to request pets, and ban on discriminatory blanket bans, such as benefit claimants and families with children. So all of those issues, I think, will more than redress any risk to landlords, and will really add much more stability in the rental market for renters. So just to redress that balance and celebrate the Renters' Rights Bill.
Happy to agree with you about the progress made there. I'm not quite sure what the financial impact will be, and that's the one that is worrying us on the homelessness front. That yes, substantial protection now for the tenants and for responsible landlords. So that's welcome. Another one where has some financial aspects, but there are other aspects to it which I miss here, is the food waste contract. We are having some reorganisation of management responsibilities in the middle of the process. We haven't yet cleared up the business, as I understand it, of the depot. So there are a number of problems around that. I suspect they'll go away, but I just wonder if the risk there isn't sufficiently substantial that it should be on this list and not on the departmental list. Anna, do you want to comment?
If we look at the risk about the depot and getting that ready in time, that's one that has a lot of risk indicators, so it has the potential to be quite high risk. But everything at the moment is on track with that one. The Corporate Programme Board monitors that from the capital side every other month, and they have quite a rigorous plan. At the moment, it isn't at a place where it needs to be escalated, but it certainly is being monitored very closely. If we talk about any changes to how we're managing in terms of the waste contract, that I think we're fine with that. We've got arrangements in place, and there aren't any risks coming up that need to be escalated to this level at the moment.
Yes, I was happy with the contract. I'm grateful for the assurance that the risks are mitigated on the particular aspect which was worrying me. The other area which I think, again, we need to keep a watchful eye on is the impact on planning of the fact that our house building totals are way down. We're not uncommon. I think this year is the lowest number of housing completions since 2015, 2016, lower even than the COVID year, and 6% down on last year, which itself was down on the previous year. So we're clearly not going to get anywhere near delivering our land supply totals, and that puts us very vulnerable as a planning authority. There is nothing much we can do about it, which is the problem with a risk chart where mitigation is really largely out with our control. But the only thing we could do is to build some council houses. And even there, we would need the cooperation of Homes England. There are some good things coming online which will be a mitigation. Homes England have purchased the mill site in Robertsbridge. But it does seem to me that that risk is knocking our land supply position, through no fault of the planning committee, is being knocked sideways. And the planning committee has a large number of consents outstanding which have not been built out. So I think probably that one does need to figure somewhere, but with the caveat that it's one over which we have very limited influence, unlike most of the other risks we face. Anna, would you like to comment?
Yeah, we did start working on risk, which is risk 9, inability of Rother to deliver its house building targets. We are going to have to watch this carefully. The local plan is going through consultation. It is, as you say, one that by and large we have to tolerate. You know, we can't treat it particularly well, but that one we need to watch closely. It's a 9 at the moment, but it could well be higher.
Yes, what worried me is we seem to get sucked into this thing that the government keeps doing. They blame all the problems on the planning system. In fact, the planning system has delivered nationally 1.5 million unbuilt houses at the moment. I don't know what the extant figure for us is concerned. Joe may be able to tell us, but it will certainly be 4 figures and not 3. So the planning system is actually working quite well, but the problem is that the planning commissions take so long to build out. Some of the houses that we gave permission to in 2016 haven't been built out yet, or are just about being built now in North East Bexhill. There's a site in Burwash, which has been sitting unbuilt out now for at least 6 years. I hate to say what the Blackfriars record was until the housing company got going. So nothing we can do about that, but actually we are well on target with our local plan. We're going out to Regulation 18 in January and Regulation 19 in the summer. So I think we should remove the local plan, which gives a long focus to that, and focus very much on the crisis in the housing industry. Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chair, that the problem is really that it's market-led, and that's not within our control. The best we can do is to look at the price of mortgages, how the market is going and make sure that we really push to get stuff built out once we consider it should be financially viable. And maybe some of the builders do need a little push at that time, or a reminder that it should now be doable. But more than that, I don't think we can do.
Well, to be fair to Joe, and I will ask him to comment, we are turning rather into a very housing-friendly, developer-friendly environment. We have been working closely with housing associations, but many of them at the moment are focusing on improving their existing stock, not building. But we had a very successful housing forum, the second, last Friday. So Joe is doing his damnedest, I think, with his department. But Joe, you may want to comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to mention the event last week, which is, trying to do our best with limited levers to pull, really. I think on the positive side, the 39 billion announced by government earlier this year and the rent convergence, as well as the 10-year settlement on the rents, we understand from our RP partners that should start to see a change in culture, or more starts, more purchases of land from April in the new financial year. But as you say, they're balancing their new business and development business against the need to, important need to ensure building safety and that the carbon reduction targets are hit. So on the positive side, I think that the RP sector should start to be more active in this area, which will help unlock a lot of the reasons for the stalled sites on Section 106 properties on site, which is holding up many developments. So that should help. And secondly, we're still plugging away, trying to bring forward the land that needs to be identified, including our own land, which we've got 8 sites within the Reg 18 that we own, up to approximately 300 dwellings being identified to complement Blackfriars and other broader possibilities as well.
I think we'll probably come to cyber later on. By one of those strange acts of serendipity, we discussed this at the chairman's briefing, and of course, as we were discussing it, there were 3 assaults on London boroughs. So this one is obviously moving up the agenda at the moment, but I think rightly we need to discuss it in confidential business, so I shall leave that to much closer to the end of the agenda. But we need to highlight that one also to Cabinet. I'm taking it, if there are no further comments, that we draw the Cabinet's attention to the risk register, particularly highlighting the current financial situation, the current situation in regard to house building, the cyber risks. Any others that you would particularly want me to draw their attention to? I think those 3 will be quite sufficient to provoke their attention. In which case, can we not note this, but actually draw Cabinet's attention to the risk register report with particular reference to the 3 subjects we've identified, and ask them to review the position. We now move to the internal audit report, and I'll ask Gary to...
Vote on that. Would you like to vote on that case?
Yeah. Whichever of you wish to open it. Gary, do you? Or you want to say something? But...
Sorry, Chair, did you want to vote on the last item, just in terms of the resolution that you've made?
Oh, we ought to vote. Sorry, I do apologise. I thought we were unanimous, but we'll just vote to confirm it on that resolution. Right. Sorry, Gary, I skipped over a necessary piece of procedure. Gary, do you want to introduce the internal audit report?
Chair, my usually quarterly report. This quarter, the second quarter of 2025-26, we've issued 5 reports, which are capital programme, planning income, Camber Sands Welcome Centre project, building maintenance and cyber security. All provided substantial assurance, apart from the cyber security, which received limited assurance rating. As usual, the executive summaries to these are in, well, the first 4 are in the Appendix A, and the cyber security we're going to discuss in Agenda 9. Implementation of all recommendations. Current progress on outstanding recommendations has been followed up as usual, by me as usual, and the current position is shown in Appendix B, which is on page 73 onwards. In the section called Old Years, the number of cases in this section has almost doubled this quarter due to the inclusion of the recommendations still outstanding from the 24-25. There are currently 19 cases outstanding in this section, including 10 recommendations that predate 24-25. These older cases are highlighted in blue as they really should have been implemented by now. Progress on the recommendations in this section remains slow, but the statutory officer group are now proposes to monitor these cases more closely to help me get them over the line. Finally, then, the latest year's recommendations, there's only one in there and it's already been resolved, so that's why the table looks so bare. Happy to take any questions on this paper.
Thank you, Gary. It's a little depressing when you see so many outstanding recommendations. So I'm grateful if senior management team are going to grip this. I think we would urge you on, but let me turn to my colleagues and see if they have any comment. Councillor Byrne, I think you want.
Thank you. I was, can't get on with this. What I was going to ask was a more general question, as we did in the pre-meeting, about the methodology. We are as a committee, we're asked to review the results of your internal audits, whereas you are the custodian of the methodology that you use to carry out those audits. Now, it's reasonably transparent, apart from IT, which is very, very specialist. But I'm wondering how, what it is that can give this committee a feeling of security, if you like, that the tests that are being carried out and the way in which the system is being tested and stressed is adequate to proof us against the sort of attacks that our chairman just referred to. So are you happy that you have enough information on the technical aspects of that test to give you confidence that they are in fact fit for purpose?
I think, Gary, if you make a very general answer at this stage, we can come back to a more technical answer later in the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, we use our professional experience to come up with the tests, and I'll happily share them with you if you want to see those. But obviously, we also get external testers do things far more on the technical stuff than I am, and if they say things are good, it's a good indication they are. So it's a little reliant on external expertise and speaking to the IT manager in that as well.
Terry, I think probably this is better pursued under the later item, where we can go into more detail.
I have another issue,
yes,
really, which is more to do with the recommendations you've made, which have not been followed up, and the risks that you've marked here in blue. Do you get the impression that this is through lack of staff, or are you asking for things that are too difficult to do, or can we really say that we're actually disappointed that these areas that you've highlighted have not been followed up in this report so far?
But they were all agreed by management at the time we issued the reports as doable and needed to be done. I mean, there's not many. I mean, there's no high risk recommendations in there. There's mostly medium and low, or all medium and low, I should say. I don't know. It's frustrating that every quarter when I ask for an update, I get the impression some of them haven't been looked at since I asked last time, but most of them, in fairness, have moved on, but very slowly, tiny steps. And there's a couple there that could be resolved quickly if someone wanted to, you know. So I don't know. It's just frustrating. Just so many old ones. I just like to see them gone, really.
The point of the question really was to make the senior management team and the other officers aware and to really support you in your efforts for chasing these things up and getting them actually done and removed from the outstanding register.
I think, Gary, we've recorded our dissatisfaction more than once, and if needs be, we're ready to haul the officers concerned in front of this committee to ask them directly why there has been no progress. Sometimes we have a satisfactory explanation. Treasury management is a good example where there is a capacity problem. Others I have pursued, for example, all those around property, and that's quite a complicated position. But what came out as I'm sure Joe Powell will confirm, is just what a bad system we had in place really before he took post. I'm not blaming the people, but the system was a duff one. What Joe has done is bring somebody in from the private sector who has concentrated on what I would call the major issues, but it's meant that a number of minor issues have been relegated to a back burner for reasons which I understand. They just don't generate very much income. What was reassuring to me is that there is a weekly list, which I have now seen, which it gives you the state of play. Quite clearly, I think progress is being made, not quite as fast, I think, on some of the smaller items as Gary would like. But in some ways, we are getting an uplift of income of at least a fifth on some of the larger sums. And if they're taking longer at the expense of some of the smaller ones, I could probably just about tolerate that. But Joe, you may want to comment further.
Thank you, Chair. We also met with Gary last week as well, just to review the same spreadsheet that we reviewed with you, and agreed that we need to, I think, provide Audit and this committee perhaps with some indicators that might support your understanding of what's a tolerable number of these to be still in negotiation after a certain period. So the idea of a 6-month period being reasonable is that what we don't want is for there to be pressure for the team to rush through these and capitulate with lower rental negotiation, which was the case before, to be blunt. These weren't negotiated at all, really. They were just rolled over from what we can see. And in some cases, not even that. So it was, that negotiation is important, but it's not to excuse how long some of these have taken, which are too long. So Gary, I think, was also keen to develop such a metric that we will try to develop over the next period and see what we come up with. But I would suggest that a tolerance internally in the first instance with SLT be agreed, and then that could be extended by Gary to this committee and reports taken to you by exception if things aren't manageable, if you're agreeable to that.
I'm sorry to hear is going, but we are about to make a permanent appointment. But Will had a I think, a board level metric in mind, which seemed to me that it would meet Gary's needs and actually provide reassurance to this committee. So if we could actually encourage that, the development of that, and record that in the minutes, that would be very useful. I think we would want Gary to have access to whatever he needs to make a judgment, particularly senior management minutes. I was slightly startled that he wasn't getting those. So I think, again, I've asked that he be given access to those minutes. But it is quite important, I think, that we clear this up now once and for all. If there are things that really aren't worth chasing, then I think that needs to be a conscious decision, and that should be recorded somewhere. I can well understand if you've got something where there's no hope of raising the payment, where it's really £100. Why would you invest an enormous amount of money in it? Whereas if we can get Sainsbury's to take up their gift to us, that will be well worth having. Yeah, Gary.
I just want to add, the 17 cases I mentioned there, up to 17 cases, most of those are for rents in excess of £1,000. There are some trivial amounts on there, but most of them are over £1,000. Some are considerably more. You know, I think their highest is about £17,000. Also, at least 60% of the outstanding cases on there are over 2 years old. So, and some are up to 5, 6, 7 years old. So, I mean, it's this will be addressed if we get a metric going of what you know, how quickly they've been turned around. I mean, I fully accept the need to negotiate to get a proper price, but my trouble is I can't see the movement at the moment. This is what I'm trying to get. So I'm trying to get Will and his team to do. Just give me some indication when they last made contact with the tenant to negotiate and things like that. So, sorry, that's all I want to say on that.
I think, well, Joe, come in.
Well, in our meetings, both with you and directly and with Gary, we're able to explain that the team meet weekly to review all cases, and they meet with the agents that we use every 3 weeks to discuss all cases. So they are discussed regularly. However, there clearly is a lack of movement in certain cases that do need to have more of a rocket up the backside, basically. So we will be working towards that, as I say, with Gary to try and find a metric that satisfies him and you as a committee to show progress. But I wouldn't want to give the impression that these are, with the exception of those that are, you know, for a £60 licence and on a, you know, whatever it might be, with the exception of those, that they're not being discussed and not taken forward. It's just challenging, especially under the 1954 Act, leases for repairing leases. There's a lot of, the lessee holds a lot of control over that negotiation, and it's not as simple as us just naming the rent and then getting agreement. It's much more of a negotiation which can become protracted and go into arbitration, and then legal processes ensue. So it is quite a protracted process with a legal aspect to it, but that's not to excuse some of these are taking too long, 100% acknowledged.
Yes, I think talking with Will, I think I can understand why some of the biggish ones are taking between 18 months and 2 years. I think anything that goes over 2 years should really be worrying, and something needs to be done about those, because really that is too long in terms of proper budgetary control even of what we're doing. I think too, some of what I saw in train would be reassuring to Gary if he saw it. So I think getting the right metric, particularly putting posts on some of these things where we outsource, that if it goes beyond another 6 months, the question is asked quite seriously, why? The in-house team clearly are chasing themselves, but the external people, I really would like to see a bit more evidence that they are being chased. I'm sure Will is chasing them, but he's on the ball. And I'd like the incoming officer to have a workable system in place, so that we don't have this as a sort of perennial debate.
Indeed, I just wanted to clarify, there is no appointed officer as yet. We're still in the interview process. Yeah.
I have grasped that, but incoming but no date is not altogether reassuring. Yes,
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Biggs.
Yeah, finances. I keep seeing debts being written off, COVID debts, other debts being written off. I can't see any figures anywhere. I've asked this question in the past, how much debts are being written off? And I see figures all in the rest of all the audit accounts, but I can't see any figures here. So can we tell us exactly how much the council are thinking of writing off?
Anna, have you got? Oh, Joe.
Yeah, no, I don't know the write-off figure. We can probably get that. I do know what, in terms of COVID debt outstanding, there's still outstanding debt from before 2020. So that's the record starting 2018. So that's about £70,000. During the COVID period, which is roughly 2020 to 2022 inclusive, there's £160,000 outstanding. And 23-24, there's 70,000 outstanding. The vast majority of there's in year, because of rent reviews and these negotiations that are going on, there's quite a bit. But these are all actively being pursued. They're on a register of debts. But at some stage, they will be considered for being written off. But that becomes a decision for the finance team and in consultation with the relevant managers. But in terms of the actual specific question you've asked, Councillor Biggs, I think there may be the need to come back to you with a number of how much is, I don't know, being written off each year, for example.
Could we do that in the next meeting? We've got a meeting in January, have we? Could you? I mean, I've asked this before. It's just the fact of the matter. It'd be interesting to see how much we are, as a council, writing off.
Yes, Charlotte.
Yes, yes, we definitely can. I just want to clarify exactly. So is it just in the context of debts that were accrued during the COVID period, or what we wrote off more generally in the last 12 months, just so that we get the right information for you?
It's from actually, obviously, COVID starting in 2019.
Sorry, can you switch for my...
It says COVID debts should be fully or partly written off. Negotiations are currently underway to agree additional charges. Others are awaiting approval to write off. I don't believe others are. So in total, I think totality really, all debts that are going to be written off, written off, we should have a total figure, so at least we know what we're looking at. Thank you.
I think we'll do that. And I think we have a particular interest in COVID debts, but it would be quite useful to know a bit more about our total uncollected arrears and what we're doing about them.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to add, that not going to really answer your question, Councillor Biggs, but just so you know, of the COVID debts on the estate's income, some are down to be written off because they decided they can't pursue them any further, but some are being recouped via adding a sort of premium to the rental just to try and get it back over a period of time. So I think at least 3 of the debts are working on that basis to claw them back. So it's just where the businesses have gone, or we just can't pursue them for whatever reason. And I think they're waiting. I don't know if they're waiting with Charlotte yet or not, but they're certain some are down to be written off, but I don't know the figures. I'm sorry.
The only reason I asked the question, obviously, is if people do read this, our agenda, it's not quite open and transparent how much it is, and to stop, what's the word I'm looking for? People putting false information out. If we've got the figures there, at least no one can then dispute what we're looking at and what we're talking about. So it's about openness and transparency, basically.
Yeah, and there is some ill-judged social media comment on some of these things. Councillor Byrne, you look pregnant with a...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. How terribly kind. In general, I think we sort of need, and I don't know whether this is possible, but a write-off strategy. If you could give us some feeling, if you give this committee some feeling of the general rules, you know, whether it's just time, whether it's the time and expense to collect and the small amount, or just if you could maybe come up with 2 or 3 statements that govern the way in which you write things off, we could then look at those write-offs and comment on them, rather than just note that they've been written off. As Councillor Bigg says, it would give us far more armament, if you like, against the social media inaccuracies. Well, actually, social media and inaccuracies, almost an oxymoron there. But I think it would really be useful if that could be done.
Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the Constitution in the financial regs does outline some broad, very broad categories in which we would consider a write-off. But I agree, we could have a more comprehensive kind of debt management policy, which is much clearer and more explicit about the exact steps that we'll go through. We may want to consider whether or not we discuss that in the public domain or in closed session. But yes, absolutely. I don't know if I can draft that for January. I'll just be completely transparent. So I can definitely get you some data that we can discuss in January. We do want to have a look at the Constitution around financial regs anyway more broadly. So I'd prefer to incorporate changes at that time, if that's okay with the committee.
Yes, I don't think every policy needs to end in the Constitution.
No, we certainly wouldn't want an in-depth, but some general, you know, just general canter through the type of strategy. Such if we did want to drill down at any time, we could. But we don't want to micromanage or get into operational management. Just get a feel for the overall council policy.
That's fine. I can summarise the overall approach in the report alongside the debt, if you're not looking for a detailed piece. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right, if we finish with that, I think we... Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to what Terry said there, it occurred to me that what he was saying specifically about debt might be something that we could apply more generally to the relationship between Gary and the council. In other words, the usefulness of having, yes, it's a pretty amazing thought, that the notion of having some kind of set of protocols or expectations as to how Gary functions and how the council functions in response to Gary. In other words, a set of rules where, for example, if there could be an agreement that if you want a particular figure, a specific figure, that figure should be supplied to you within a certain period of time. Or if you want to get a reply to an email, that you should get a reply to that email within a certain period of time. And not merely a kind of holding, I'll get back to you later, but a substantive reply that would be of some use. And I wonder if there was a set of rules of this sort, a set of processes which were agreed within the council, whether that wouldn't help us to support Gary in his function as the audit manager. Because then we could say, Gary has done this, he's done what is asked of him, and this is the response he's asked for from officers, and either the response has not been forthcoming, or it's not been forthcoming within a reasonable time limit. And that would then give a very clear set of expectations, a very clear framework within which you could operate, and which the council could operate to, and which would strengthen the audit function. It's just a thought which followed upon what Terry has said about a specific thing. I'm wondering whether that could be applied more generally. The committee wants to support Gary, but I'm not sure just sort of having a kind of star chamber and holding people in and saying, why haven't you done that, is the best way of doing it. I think to have agreed processes might be a better way of doing it. So it's a more partnership way of doing it. Just a thought there, which I said.
I'm a little uneasy about that, but we have a constitution, we have financial regulations, we have an audit charter, which I think is widely accepted as authoritative on those sort of relationships. Whether any more detail will be useful, given that the situations aren't particularly standard, and trying to codify them, I think, may actually prevent Gary operating as effectively as might otherwise do. I think I will ask Charlotte and Gary to comment, but I think if there were deficiencies in our financial regs or in some of our constitution, I would hope Gary would have raised that matter with me. Sorry, I didn't see you. Lorna, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with your last statement, actually. And just to add to that, we have a number of other ways of making sure that we hold ourselves to account and we're doing proper planning. So, we have a service planning process where we look at KPIs for services. That is all part of the system of making sure we have strong performance management, and we have other ways of making sure that we're following through on our actions and recommendations. We're trying to include those recommendations in service plans and in people's personal appraisals. So we have all these other mechanisms, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, as well as the Constitution and our financial regulations. We also have a whole sort of process, an internal process of holding ourselves to account and making sure we're delivering. I accept there have been some very long-standing, outstanding recommendations. I think I agree with you, Chair, that we are getting to the point of some of these now. The reason that they're not being done is because they're no longer relevant. So we've made sure that we have a audit recommendation tracker, and that's something that we look at on a regular basis through our statutory officers group. So I think we are really, really trying to tighten the controls that we have. And I think to put more in place is probably wouldn't serve its purpose. It's making sure we're working well with the systems that we have.
Can I remind you that Charlotte is not merely our finance officer, she is the Section 151 officer. So I'd ask her to put that hat on and comment.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I mean, much of what I was going to say, I think, has been covered. We, in the Constitution itself, there is a specific section on internal audit. It's fairly comprehensively covered. So it's on page 14 of the Financial Procedure Rules, if you're interested to look it up, Section L. And it covers why internal audits are a really important function for us statutorily. But it also covers what my responsibilities are, what Gary's responsibilities are, what the wider management structure's responsibilities are. So I think that probably covers the intent that you're trying to express. And as Lorna's already said, Statutory Officers Group do look at those recommendations. And we meet next Wednesday, so we can have some further conversations about whether there's anything more that we can do. But I don't think in terms of adding to the document framework that we've already got, there is much more that needs to be done. It's, I guess, practically the resources to deliver, but yeah, I'll pass over to Gary. Thank you.
I think it might be useful if we all relook at the relevant documents, and if any improvements suggest themselves, then we can come back to it. But I think at the moment, both our Section 151 officer and our head of internal audit are broadly satisfied with the framework. It's occasionally we've let ourselves down on not chasing the recommendations hard enough. And I think the sanction there is to ask the relevant officer to explain him or herself. And maybe that we will be talking about a little more under cyber, though I don't want to sound critical.
I'd be happy with that. I think that's a very good contribution there. But maybe there is a point in looking at that audit policy and just seeing whether any gaps in it or any improvements that could be offered. But otherwise, I think your approach is a very, very good answer, and I think Lorna's answer was a very good answer as well. Thank you.
I think if after rereading it, and I will ask you all to reread it, if anybody has suggestions to make, I'll make sure they're on the agenda of the next meeting. Councillor McGurk, you wanted to come.
Just a final point on that. I mean, I'm very wary of, you know, hauling officers in front of the audit committee. I think it's, you know, if we've got confidence in operational management within the council, we've got, you know, very good senior officers and a senior leadership team. I think there are ways of you know, operationally managing and supporting staff to meet targets and to, you know, to work to a plan. And I'm uncomfortable with that sort of approach, and I would rather entrust the, you know, the meeting of targets and managing day-to-day work, day-to-day tasks to the senior leadership team.
So I don't think we were talking about this as regular. In fact, we've got senior officers here today who are explaining. What was extraordinarily useful to me as chairman of audit was meeting with the specific officer responsible, who obviously knew in detail much more what was going on, and it was a considerable reassurance to me. If I'd felt that we needed that committee, I think I would have asked that to happen. But Joe has more than adequately explained what is going on and what Will is trying to do about it to make sure that Gary has a better set of information. Really, KPIs by another name is, I think, what he has in mind. And that will be a very useful additional tool for Gary to look at. But I don't think I want to have a sort of star chamber every meeting. That would be totally unacceptable. If nobody else has anything to add there, I think we need to note, although I'll ask a fairly full minute is kept, we need to note the audit committee report. We better just take a vote on that. Are you prepared to note it? Good. I think rather than go into closed session now, I will take the work programme first, and that will allow only those who need to remain to remain. So if we move to item 10, the work programme, are there any comments or things that people want to say on that? Seemed to me fairly comprehensive. We weren't able to have a treasury management report this meeting, so it's coming to the next meeting. And that will make for a fairly accurate report as we move towards year end. Are we happy with the work programme, therefore? Excellent, in which case we take note of that. We now move to, because of the nature of the business to be resolved, which is highly confidential, we need to move into private session and exclude the press and public. Will you vote to exclude the press and public, please? Thank you very much. Now, we move back. Welcome to you all back online. We've completed our confidential session, and I thank everybody for their attendance. I thank those who are watching, and I declare this meeting closed at 8:05.